Why should you care about, learn, and use Chicken Scheme? This is what I want to talk about in this video. Chicken Scheme is a scheme dialect, and Scheme is a Lisp dialect. So, and if you've watched my other videos, which were titled Why Lisp and Why Scheme, you already have a pretty good idea where it's located in this hierarchy. So, first, I want to say why Chicken Scheme, because it has stood the test of time. Chicken Scheme was, I think, first conceived in the year 2000 by Felix Wickelmann, and it has since grown and flourished, really. And yeah, so this is, I think, the main point, because time is the ultimate test. And the same, of course, holds true for Scheme and Lisp as well. They have stood the test of time. So the first thing I want to talk about is that Chicken compiles down to C. So it doesn't directly compile to bytecode, but it simply translates Chicken or Scheme code to C code. And I also want to show you a direct example of this. So I have this, and don't be put off by the whole complexity of the screen. So in the middle I have the Chicken Scheme file. So, and this is just normal Scheme code, or Chicken Scheme code. So we have a define here, we define a variable, hello, and it holds the string hello chicken, and then we print that variable. And if I go up here to the terminal, and I type in CSI, which is the Chicken Scheme interpreter, and I can make this a little bit bigger, and then S for script, and then I pass y chicken scheme.scm, which is the name of this file, and I run this, it will print out hello chicken, as you would expect. If I now compile this, and again, this is really nice because Chicken compiles down to C, and then it simply compiles the C code. So if I compile this, and then run the y chicken scheme binary, it will output hello chicken, obviously. And if I now compile, and this does multiple things. It compiles the Chicken Scheme code down to C, and then it links the C code and compiles that with a C compiler, for example, GCC. But I can also now take a look at the Chicken, at the actual C code it generates. So if I run csc-t with this scheme file, it will generate the Chicken code, which I've already opened down here. It will generate the C code, which I've already opened down here. So it starts with a comment, and then it includes the Chicken header. So this is pretty much the runtime for Chicken Scheme. And then, of course, it does some cryptic C code stuff, which is like automatically generated. So yeah, this is not really human readable, but of course, yeah, so computationally generated. But again, it's just normal C code. And if you wanted to, you could dig in here and understand why. And there are some comments, some trace texts, for example, for this print call here, and also the line number and whatnot. So yeah, but of course it's very cryptic, and it also doesn't show everything because, for example, right here it says top level, but it doesn't define a main function, because the main function is defined in this Chicken header at the top. So right here. So yeah, it's not very transparent, but I wanted to show it anyways because I think it's very cool that it translates to C. Yeah, and that also gives you a lot of extra benefits right off the gate. So Chicken runs on many platforms. So of course, x86, 64, Linux, macOS, Windows, but also, yeah, other platforms. So and I want to, before I go to the next point, I want to show you the Chicken Scheme website, because I think it already lists out all the great points which I want to talk about in this video right off the gate, kind of. And maybe I should have done this in the start. So Chicken is a compiler for Scheme.programming language. It supports R5RS and R7RS, which I talked about in the Why Scheme video, if you watched that, or if you want to watch that. And it aims to be free, simple, portable, extensible, well-documented, and actively supported. So the simple part is what I just talked about, with that it compiles down to C. So it's really lightweight on dependencies, a GNU toolchain and make, and it also is easy to install. That makes it also very portable because, well, if it compiles down to C, you only need a C compiler on any platform, and C is one of the, if not the most popular programming language, and like it supports pretty much every platform. So you can deploy or use Chicken Scheme on every platform that's supported by C. It's also extensible and well documented and actively supported. But let me go back to my slides and let me talk about this. So next up, I want to talk about the development experience. And I think like Chicken Scheme has a really, really good development experience, I think. So I list here Chicken install, Chickadee, and Chickadee. So Chicken install is what you use to, well, install like extensions. And yeah, so this is all, it's kind of all one thing, I think. And this also goes hand in hand with the other points I have here, and which of course they list as well on their website. Because something like a like lightweight package or extension manager like Chicken install can only work if you have like libraries and good documentation. Everything is kind of well maintained by a big, friendly, active community. So, but let me go through this anyway. So let me switch to FF. So this is I can delete this. This is a library I have written for it's a simple string format macro, and I've made like videos about that. And let me switch here to the FF eShell, yes, here. So what I can now do, if I close this, is I have this directory here, and really there are only two files. So there's this Git directory, we can ignore that, and then there is the actual source file for the module or for the extension, and it starts with a module definition, and then import stuff, and then down here are the actual is the actual code. And then there is this egg file. And chicken extensions are called eggs because, well, chicken, egg. But it's a really simple format. You have some metadata here, license, author, synopsis, then the dependencies which you need. So I list here UTF-8 and RSFI1. And then the components. So I have only one component, which is an extension, and this is in contrast to, for example, a program. So this is not a single binary which the user should run, but this is an extension which can be incorporated into other programs, and it's called FF. And to now install this, I simply call chicken install. And I also specify the sfag because I need root access, and I also specify sudo equals doers because I don't use sudo but doers. And if I do this now, it will compile this code and install it. And it will generate a bunch of files. So if I list this here, it will generate all these kind of extra files. So all that's not ff.scm and ff.egg. And as you can see, it generates objects files like shared libraries and so on and so forth. And it puts them in its install directory. So if I now, for example, go back to my Chicken Scheme example, I can now, if I pull up a REPL, I can now import this FF library or extension. If I do this. So it will import a bunch of stuff, and now I can use this. For example, like this. 1 plus 2. Or we can do a little like 1 plus 2 equals. Like this is maybe a better example. And if I do this, it will format the string as anticipated. But what I wanted to say here is that chicken install is really nice. And of course, this was for a local library, for a local extension, but you can also, it also automatically fetches extensions from the Chicken Scheme repository, which is very well maintained. And Chickadee is another thing. So let me go there, localhost, I think it's 8080. So Chickadee is a documentation platform which you have on your computer locally, where you can just look up documentation. So for example, we can look up documentation for Surfree1, which is the list library. So here we can read about all the functions that are in this extension. And there's a table of contents and whatnot. And you can, of course, I mean, this is just a web interface. And there's also a command line interface, but I like the web interface more for these kind of things. So you can search in it and whatnot, and yeah, it's just, I mean, it's really cool. And you can also, like, just, for example, let me go back. You can also search for regex and whatnot. So, I don't know, let's search for append, everything that includes append in it. And it will give you back all the stuff with the corresponding extensions. And you can, for example, if I didn't have, I don't know, this mini canren extension installed, which I don't have, I can simply call chicken install with the name and it will install it. Yeah, or chicken uninstall to uninstall it and all this kind of stuff. So the tooling is really good. And I think this is a thing that a lot of other scheme implementations kind of lack. Oh yeah, and let me say I forgot to mention this, for the point that chicken compiles down to C, I like that a lot because it makes it like you don't have a virtual machine. For example, Guile scheme uses a virtual machine, or not a virtual, well, a virtual machine, I think, so it compiles down to bytecode, not to C code, and you kind of always have to have this overhead. With chicken, you can generate static binaries which you can deploy anywhere, which I think is really great. So you don't have to always ship with the interpreter, which again makes it very portable. All right, so well documented, I already went into this kind of. So there is the chicken scheme wiki. There's also this getting started page, which I already mentioned in the scheme video, which is, I think, a really good starting point to learn about scheme and chicken scheme and actually learn how to use it. And chicken scheme has a lot of these great pages which go into a lot of detail. So there's also, for example, elevator pitch, which goes into all the main points why chicken is a great language for real life programming. So for example, they say here what I said a few seconds ago: static linking makes it easy to distribute binaries to users. And yeah, so they have a lot of good text here, also on macros and eggs, how to install and load eggs. So it's just, the documentation is just really good because there is a great community. So yeah, libraries and documentation. And okay, let me go back. I want to show also the eggs page. So there is an index page which lists out all the eggs which are supported or which are in the chicken scheme main repository, you could call it. So all of these you can install by using chicken install without having to git clone or without having the source code on your machine. And as you can see, there are a lot of extensions, and for every kind of use case. So for example, if you go to web programming, there's a lot of stuff which you can look at, which you can get inspired by, and so on. So it's just a lot of stuff. So you don't really have this kind of moment when you're using a niche language, quote unquote, where you think, well, I want to do this, I want to, I don't know, pass JSON, but the language I want to use doesn't have a JSON parser, and I don't want to spend hours and days writing one myself. I mean, you can, chicken has that somewhere. For example, here, C JSON parsing done in C. Or think of anything else. Yeah. So chicken probably has it, which I think is great and which makes it a real practical language to use. So, let me go to the final point: friendly, big, and active community. And this goes hand in hand with everything else, because if there's not a big active community, there won't be extensions, there won't be good documentations, people just won't care to make the development experience, quote unquote, good, and so on and so forth. So for chicken, there are different mailing lists, one for users, one for developers, one for official announcement, one for vulnerabilities, and so on and so forth. There's also an IRC channel, and yeah, I think that's the main points where the community is located. And yeah, I mean, what else can I say? It's great. There are a lot of people who are very passionate about the project and to try to push it forward and make it better. And this is all within the realm of a community project. So this is not there's no company behind Chicken Scheme. And yeah, maybe I should have mentioned it earlier, but that is also one of the reasons I really like it. So in contrast to, for example, chess scheme, which is tied to Cisco. Yeah, so I think that's pretty much all I wanted to cover in this video. So these are all very kind of meta aspects, you could say. So of course there are technical aspects like it compiles down to C and all that, and you could say like libraries are a technical aspect as well. But I think the more like human aspects really dominate and really kind of form the basis for why Chicken Scheme is a practical and portable scheme system which you can use for real life programming, for actually solving problems you have or things you want to accomplish with your computer. So yeah, you can visit the Chicken Scheme website at call-cc.org, and I will link this on my website, of course. And yeah, this is the last thing I want to say. I have made a bunch of videos about Chicken Scheme, also a introduction to Chicken Scheme, which includes installation, usage, libraries, documentation, so which goes through all of what I showed you in this video, including how to install it, how to like use it in more detail, how to install libraries, how to set up this documentation for your local computer and whatnot, so you don't have to have an internet connection to actually use the language and look stuff up and whatnot. I've also made a video about like creating a chicken extension, which I showed you in the beginning for my FF macro, and a bunch more. I also talked about, I think down here, about my static site generator, about how to interactively call C code from Chicken Scheme. That's another great thing I forgot to mention, that because Chicken compiles down to C, you can of course easily like kind of use C in your Chicken projects, or the other way around. So it's great to like interact with C code. Also about my development environment for Chicken Scheme projects, and yeah. So I have a few videos on that if you are interested in getting started with Chicken Scheme and actually using it for real life projects. So yeah, I think that's pretty much it. That's all I wanted to talk about this video. I hope this kind of gave you a glimpse into why people like Lisp Scheme and Chicken Scheme in particular. I think it's the most practical, and like it's the best set of, it has the best set of quote unquote features and aspects and like properties which make it, I think, at least for my use case, the best language to use. And I've used a bunch of other languages, starting with Java, Python, also C, of course. Also, I have used Common Lisp, I've used Clojure. And yeah, I think Scheme, and in particular Chicken Scheme, is just the best language, at least for me, and it may be for you too. Alright, that's it. Have a nice day.